This will complete his last speech to complete his Advanced Communication Silver designations, the ACS. All Tracy has remaining is to achieve the DTM, is 10 speeches from 2 advanced manuals, 2 speeches from the Success Leadership Series, and to serve as a club mentor or coach. Tracy has been working toward his DTM since joining MidDay Toastmasters in 2008. That's quite a while ago. Very persistent, Tracy, and we appreciate your participation. So if you come forward and give us some information on my story.
Hello, Sherry. Hi, this is Tracy Austin calling. You know, Sherry, I agreed to do that presentation at DSCC there on the east side of Columbus there 3 months from now, but you know what? I've really been thinking about this a lot, Sherry, and I just can't do it. I'm just too afraid to do that presentation. Will you have somebody do it for me or get somebody to do it with me? Because I'm terrified to do that speech. That was the phone call that I made in 2008 to the Director of Public Relations at Franklin University, Sherry Mercurio. She's the Director of Public Relations, but she's also in charge of the Speakers Bureau. And that was my first attempt to go out into the community and speak to the public, but I was backing out of that commitment, and it wasn't until 3 months down the road that I was going to do that presentation. That really set the stage for me to become a better Toastmasters member and prepare and practice like crazy so I can get over my fear of public speaking. And with a lot of practice and preparation, I'm going to tell you some stories about how I overcame that fear of public speaking and to be up here in front of you now and travel to San Antonio, New Orleans, overcoming this fear of public speaking that I've had. And the way that I decided to change the way I look at public speaking. And one of the books that I read to help me with this was a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Dr. Susan Jeffers. And there's a quote in that book that helped me change my perspective on public speaking. And it's this one: there is no failure, only feedback. There are no mistakes, only lessons learned. And when I chose to look at my speeches as simply feedback and lessons learned, it changed the game for me. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share with you how I learned to use preparation and practice to overcome this fear of public speaking. You can see on the slide all the things that I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to give you some tips, some helpful hints, and about my stories and how I've learned to prepare and practice for presentations. First, I want to talk about the lectern in the audience. Recently, it was 2014, I had an experience that I learned a lot, got a lot of feedback on. So 2014, I'm a member of Toastmasters for 6 years, I'm feeling pretty confident. I was asked by one of our groups at Franklin University, the I-4 team, whatever that stands for, I can't remember, so I apologize for that. The I-4 team moved into a new building on 236 East Town Street. Really nice building for Franklin University, and then the lower level of that building had a really high-tech training room with a lot of technology, and the chairs and seats were on a stage, so you could see the presenter, and I'm thinking, oh, I'd love to do something in this new facility. So I get it all scheduled. I go over there a couple hours beforehand, thinking that I'm going to go in that beautiful new training room, and that's not where it was. It was actually in a break room. And in that break room, they had tables, high-top tables, with bar stool type chairs around it. They have tables and chairs like this, but they also have couches and comfortable seating to sit in because it's a break room. And that's where I had to do my presentation. Totally threw me off guard, and there was no technology in the room either. So I scrambled to get everything arranged so I could at least be up in the front of the room so they could all see me. Fortunately, I was at least a little bit prepared because everybody had information packets that they, as a handout. So what I had to do to adapt was I had to walk through every sheet in that packet and walk through it that way rather than using a PowerPoint that I had planned for. So my lesson and my feedback was ask the questions about where it's going to be, what kind of technology you're going to have, what's the room setup, and asking all of those types of questions. Great feedback. One of the other stories that comes to my mind as far as the audience and location, I'll always remember being in a table topics and humorous contest at American Electric Power. It was in the evening, it was up on the first floor overlooking Columbus, and I remember I was competing in the table topics contest, but Glenn Pritchard, a longtime member, was competing in the humorous contest. And what I noticed he did about probably an hour before the actual contest, I saw him walking up on the speaking area, just walking around, and you can see his wheels spinning about where he was going to give each part of his speech. And I took that lesson from him and started doing that anytime I do a presentation anywhere. I walk the stage so I can get acclimated with where I am going to give my speech. Great lesson there. Another story that comes to my mind, I was asked to do a hall leadership lessons here at Franklin University in Ross Auditorium. Most of the time in Ross Auditorium, you're up on a stage as the speaker. And it's really rather sterile in my mind. What I decided to do, I don't want to do my presentation up on that stage. I want to be down on the floor with my audience because it was more of a workshop. I wanted to get out and talk to them and mingle with all the participants. So I actually got it set up where I got one of these tables. I had my laptop with me, so I didn't have to turn my head like this guy's doing here, away from my audience. So I had my laptop in front of me just like this, and that's why you'll always see me playing around with this computer screen, and it's actually not in the best spot. I would like to have it right here so I can look at you all the time. Because I don't want to turn my back or my head away from the audience. But again, feedback and a lesson learned in that regard. So every time I go to any kind of workshop or speaking event, that is one of the things I do, is make sure I ask those questions and make sure I know exactly where I'm going to be speaking. Let's talk a little bit about microphones. Actually, this slide right here is Ross Auditorium. And you can see up on the stage is where they would typically do a presentation. But I decided I'm going to be down here in the corner with a table just like this because I wanted to engage with the audience. Now, some of the things that I've learned about doing presentations in the Ross Auditorium here at Franklin, one of the things that has happened in the past is we would have speakers and we'd have one lavalier mic on that speaker. And what would happen, because we have an online audience, anytime the person would turn their head one way or the other, you couldn't hear that person speak very clearly compared to if they were just standing in one spot with their head in one spot. So what we decided to do was actually put two lavalier mics on each of the speakers, so every time you moved your head, our audience could hear you. So that's one of the things that we learned about microphones. Another thing that it's not about microphones per se, but it's about sound. It's about sound. I remember the story. I don't know if Bob Donnelly remembers this, but I remember Robin Starr giving a speech here, and Bob gave her feedback in her speech because she has a tic. So rather than an she has a tic. And what happens with you when you have a hearing aid when that tic reverberates? It ticks. It ticks. Ticks you off. But that's a great lesson to learn about sound and to get rid of that tick in your speaking. Another story I'd like to share about a great lesson learned, and this was early on in my career at Toastmasters. It was 2008. I had joined Toastmasters in January 2008. I was asked to do a presentation by Tom Hooker, a veteran Toastmasters member, sometime in the fall of 2008. Again, one of the first times somebody's asked me to speak somewhere. He asked me to speak at a Rotary Club on the east side of town at a banquet facility. I can't even remember the name of it. I even did some research. I don't think it's the same name, so I couldn't find exactly where it is. But it's over on Winchester Pike on the east side. So I was filling all of that when Tom asked me to go, and I go over there to the banquet facility because I'm going to talk about online learning to the group at the Rotary Club. And I've been practicing with my PowerPoint slides and all of that and showing them exactly how online classes work. So I get to the facility a couple hours early. They have no Wi-Fi. And I didn't have a backup plan. So what I ended up doing, because I didn't ask the right questions, what I ended up doing was, again, I had the packets for everyone, and I just walked through each of the things in the packet to make it work and talk about online education. So what I'm telling you, anytime you go to an event where you have to talk, make sure you ask the questions about what type of internet connection that they have. Next thing I want to talk about is the audience. So when I first started doing these presentations, there's a presentation that I do every year. It's the Personal Development Coach Training Program. Do it every year. Charles has been a part of that in the past. But as I was starting out in doing those workshops, I was so terrified of engaging the audience because I was so into my head. I didn't want to talk to any of the audience members because I was scared. I was terrified because that gremlin voice, my yang voice, you are not good enough, said, you're going to fail, they're not going to like it, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not experienced enough, you're not prepared enough. All of those gremlin voices that it was saying to me, I couldn't engage the audience. But what changed for me was when I saw my coach, my mentor, Janine Moon, this person right here, she did an event at Franklin University, and every person that walked in that presentation, she greeted them and thanked them for coming and saying, what brings you here today? And I hope you have some questions. I hope you're engaged, and just stand back and have a good time in the time that we're here. And I saw the results that she got by doing that, so I started replicating everything that she did. And the results have been tremendous because I engaged every member. And I'm a very relational guy. That's my strength, are the relationships. So that carried out in all the workshops that I've done because I've engaged them, and thus they engage me when I'm doing any kind of talk or presentation. So I suggest, definitely greet your audience with enthusiasm. Rehearsing the speech. This is actually the last time I did my personal development coaching training. This was last year. And it was probably one of the best training sessions that I've had. And I probably say that every year. But it's because I learn every time I give that presentation. But it wasn't always this way. The first time that I did that coach training in 2007, here's what I did. I had my 3-ring binder, and I had it all scripted out. Everything that I was saying was scripted right here. And I stood up in front of the advisors that I was practicing this with for 2 hours and read from a 3-ring binder. That very next day, I looked for a Toastmasters club to help me overcome my fear of public speaking. And I'm still doing it to this day, learning how to tell stories rather than being in my head, how to help the audience with just take away one thing from what I talk about during my workshop. In another story in regard to practice, longtime member Anthony Iannarino says you should actually practice 25 times any speech or presentation that you do. Now, I haven't done this one 25 times. I've probably done it 15 times. But something to think about. Practice it 20 to 25 times. Another thing that I always do, always recommend this, is I do a self-evaluation every single time I do a speech. And those 3 questions that I ask myself is, what worked well? So I'll bullet point what worked well in the presentation. What didn't work well? I'll bullet point that. What am I going to do differently the next time? I bullet point that so I can incorporate that the next time that I give a speech. Now, the beauty of Toastmasters is, I hope that all of you will give me some feedback. So if we can, Charles, if you can pass these around for me. With our love notes, that's a great way to get feedback. Plus, the structure that we have evaluators give us feedback as well. So always make sure you do a self-evaluation. Some other things to consider: create a biography for yourself that you can give to whoever you're doing the presentation for. Do professional headshots. This is a professional headshot that I had completed late last year. Also, at Toastmasters, make sure you provide an introduction like both the speakers did today, especially in these advanced manuals, so people have context for what you are going to be talking about. And visualize every single speech that you do. Lastly, I'd like to conclude. This was my coach training session of last year, April 2015, that I said was my best one ever. But it's because of the 8 years of practice and the 8 years of preparation from 2008 to 2016 that I've become a better speaker through practice and preparation and changing my mindset that there is no failure, only feedback. There are no mistakes, only lessons learned. Thank you.